Добрый день.
A very good morning to all of you. I'm happy to welcome the participants in this news conference. I would like to welcome our journalists here at the press center and those following our live stream online on the website of the media group's press center and on the social media. We would like to start this news conference titled Crossing the Atlantic in the Name of the Truth, and we will learn the story of former Joe Biden's congressional aide, Tara Reade, and I'm glad and privileged to introduce her, former congressional aide to Joe Biden, the current U.S. president, writer and essayist Tara Reade. Good morning.
Итак,
And also taking part in this news conference is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the State Duma, Maria Butina. So during today's conversation, Tara will talk about what is actually happening in the United States politics, and she will also share a major decision in her life. So now the floor is yours, Tarek. Please share your story. How come you're in Russia, and what kind of a decision you wanted to share with us?
And I feel really happy to be here, and I feel safe. And for those of you that don't know me, I am a writer, an author, and I'm a former aide for Senator Joe Biden. I also worked for Leon Panetta and worked for congressional races for the Democratic Party and for state senator. In 1993, when I was in my 20s, while working for Joe Biden, I was sexually harassed by him and sexually assaulted. I did not go to the media at that time. I filed a report and went through protocol. Nothing was done. I was threatened. I lost my job and I lost my career as a result of coming forward. Then in 2019, it became clear that Joe Biden was running for president, although he was not the front runner at that time. There were 7 other women that came forward. One of those women was Lucy Flores. She was a political representative in Nevada, and she was getting torn to pieces by the press for coming forward about Joe Biden's inappropriate behavior. I decided at that time to speak out about my experience in 1993, but before I did, I tried to reach out to congressional representatives privately. No one responded. I reached out to Bernie Sanders. I reached out to AOC. I reached out to Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, who were in California, my representatives, and they gave me silence, no response. Then I went to an organization called Time's Up. Time's Up was an organization in America that was prompted by the Me Too movement, funded by Hollywood stars for millions of dollars to provide legal and PR assistance to people who were coming forward about powerful people that had been harmed. Time's Up has since been dismantled. It's been discovered it was corrupt. And part of the corruption was my case. I went to them for help, not knowing they were already on the payroll for the Joe Biden campaign. He gave them, according to FEC, which is the Federal Elections Commission records, over $2.2 million while I was trying to come forward to try to silence my story. This came out in the press, but very little coverage, of course, in the Western media. While during that time, I was accused, when I first came forward, of being a Russian asset, of lying, of being discredited. I was accused of all kinds of things, threatened with prison, threatened with my life, my family, my pets. It was very difficult. I kept speaking the truth. I kept pushing forward. I kept pushing forward to Republicans, hopefully that would bring an investigation into Joe Biden. Finally, this year, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, both U.S. Congress representatives, said they were going to investigate Joe Biden. But then what happened is, of course, the attacks on me started again and the threats. People started messaging me, asking me if I was suicidal, asking me, making vague threats. And I could see that starting again. And I said, I put out a viral tweet saying, that I am healthy and I am determined to bring Joe Biden to justice, to bring some sort of investigation, and to testify under oath before Congress if asked. During that time, I had the opportunity to come to Moscow, Russia. I've always loved Russia. I do not see Russia as an enemy, nor do many of my fellow American citizens. This illusion that Russia is the enemy is propagated by a few Washington elites who are determined to cause problems. In fact, I'll take you back a minute. In 2019, one of the things that got me in a little bit of trouble was that I said out loud that Joe Biden, if he were to become president, would try to go to war with Russia because of his warmongering in the past and because based on what I had heard when I worked way back as a staffer and then watched as a geopolitical analyst what was happening and the movements that were happening by NATO and by the United States. So that brings me back to the present. I had an opportunity to have my book, which is already published in different languages. I took that opportunity and had meetings and had a vacation and enjoyed Moscow. Apparently, the US government wasn't happy with my choice of vacation spots. So it became clear that going back might be a problem. I don't know the level of which the attacks will continue. I only know that when I got off the plane in Moscow for the first time in a very long time, I felt safe, and I felt heard, and I felt respected. And that has not happened in my own country. I did talk to US Congressman Matt Gaetz. I have not concealed anything. I told him I was in Moscow, Russia, and I told him why. And he said something very stunning. I am considered a whistleblower, as you know, in the United States. One of the cases I will be testifying is about how the DOJ and the FBI has weaponized by the Biden administration against its own citizens. So he said, Tara, I'm worried about your physical safety in the United States. As a US citizen, to hear a US congressman basically say they couldn't protect me in a whistleblower case is stunning. And it makes me angry. And I want to say to my fellow American citizens that as these cases against all of us are coming forward that speak out, I want you to remember the US Congress works for the US citizens. They work for us. We don't work for them. And we need to take back our power. We need to take back our truth and be able to speak it without fear of reprisal or physical harm. So, the American people are very sick of hearing about the Russophobia. The poll numbers are showing they're not in support of the proxy war that NATO and the US are waging. I have been very outspoken about this. As a geopolitical analyst, I've been very outspoken about the US and its endless wars. There are many of us, and I spoke at the Rage Against the War Machine, a rally in Washington, D.C., that are tired of all the resources going into the military. This year, for the first time, coming up, the defense budget will be $1 trillion, which is an unimaginable amount. Meanwhile, roads in America are falling apart, the infrastructure is, the economy is down, and inflation is up 40%. We have the highest child poverty rate we've ever had, the highest homeless rate in history. Our economy is crashing, and they're continuing to warmonger. Recently, it came to my attention that one of those representatives said something incredibly deplorable. And that's what he said was, speaking, I believe, to the Kiev regime, that he thought the money spent was well spent killing Russians. The only word I can think for something like that is evil. That is evil, and that is not the sentiment of the American people. And for a representative of the US Senate, the US Congress, to continue these rhetoric that is so hateful, it's so deplorable. So much of what you've seen in a lot of my content when I've talked about my case, I've also talked about the targeting of Russia and Russians and even your president. I think it's wrong, and I've spoken out about it. And there are many people around me that think it's wrong, but are afraid to speak. So further, I want to talk about the whistleblower issue. Whistleblowers, there's an act in Congress, we're supposed to have protection. Where's my protection? Where are others? Why are so many people having to seek shelter in Moscow? I feel very lucky to be here. I don't want people to think that anyone told me what to say or anyone put me up to this. I feel very fortunate, and these are all my own thoughts. And if you follow my Twitter and you follow my content, you know I talk about geopolitical issues. You know that I analyze those things. You know how I feel about all of these things. And you also know that I never got an investigation into Joe Biden forward. It never happened as of yet. Now, I'm told that very soon it will. Hopefully, I'll be able to testify. And one thing I want to make clear, and I want my fellow American citizens to really hear this if they see this, don't be intimidated, because I'm not. I'm not going to be intimidated, bullied, or silenced. I'm going to speak out, and I'm willing to speak under oath about the corruption I witnessed, about the crime I experienced. And it is remarkable that Joe Biden raped me when I worked for him in the US Congress, and I'm supposed to be the fugitive. That is ridiculous. And it's unacceptable, and I don't accept it. So as I move forward, I hope to find safety here. I appreciate my friends in Moscow, Russia, that have opened their arms to me and giving me that safety, including Maria Butina. So thank you. I am going to make a request, and it's a large one. I'd like to apply for citizenship in Russia from the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and hopefully Maria Butina can help me with that from the State Duma. I don't know what will happen with that, but I do promise to be a good citizen, and I promise to move forward with my life in a positive way. And, I hope to also have my American citizenship, because the whole thing is, my Russian brothers and sisters, I just want to thank you for your warmth and for your kindness and for opening your heart to me when at a very scary time. Spasiba.
Thank you so much, Tara. What a touching story, and the attempts by the U.S. government to accuse you of ties with Russia is just outrageous. Ms. Butina, how did you meet Tara Reade? What can be done? What kind of help does Tara need? So how can you and your colleagues in the State Duma, how can you help Tara? Thank you so much. Tara and we met about 1 year ago, and she shared her story with me, and I was touched to the bottom of my heart. This ambiguity and this treacherous posture adopted by Joe Biden and his circle is just outrageous. They pretend to defend the rights of the people and the rights of women, but in fact, these are people that are extremely corrupt, that commit violence against people who have no ways of responding or defending themselves. Tara came to me and asked me to make it possible for her to come to Moscow and to talk about her book. But when she came here and she told her entire story, for example, the threats of murder or the suggestions of suicide and the threats her family members were getting, I knew that we cannot be idle. We must do something. Well, we Russians, we never leave people to their devices. She came here with an open heart, and I see that she wants to learn Russian, She wants to learn more about the Russian culture, and I don't believe any condescending attitude towards the Russian Federation in her. She wants to be here, to find a safe place here, a safe haven where she would feel secure, but also she wants to be part of our culture and to contribute to people's diplomacy and to promote people-to-people contacts. You cannot talk to the political elite in the United States, of course, but I'm sure and I strongly believe that what she does here will make a major contribution to promoting unity between our two nations, because this is what actually matters in these uncertain times. This is our only hope, in fact, I believe. I did hear Tara's request, and I will help her draft these applications. I will raise this issue during a sitting of our Foreign Affairs Committee at the State Duma, the lower house of the Russian parliament, and I think my colleagues will support me in asking Vladimir Putin to find a way for Tara to stay here in Russia, and maybe to benefit from a fast-track procedure to be accepted into Russian citizenship. To be a Russian citizen is a big honor and a big privilege and a responsibility, but we've known each other for quite some time now, and I see that you know this and you're aware of this. This is a major step. Just leave everything behind. I know that you came here without anything. You did not prepare to move. You did not bring your belongings with you. You came here, we had a conversation, and you understood that if you go back, maybe one day you will just disappear or will be simply killed. So we cannot, I cannot, our people, we cannot just send you back. So thank God you are here, and thank God that you can live a life here. So it's so sad that you had to live all these years in this horrible situation, but I admire you for your courage to turn to the American people and to tell them the truth, and to tell them that those in power today, those who sit on the top of this power pyramid, they are rotten. So I admire you for your courage. Thank you so much, Ms. Butina. Tara, you wanted to say something, to follow up maybe?
Yeah, I just wanted to give my gratitude to my friend, Maria, Masha, thank you. And also to say that, I wanted to add this. You know, when I came here for the interview and to talk about the book, and I was a tourist, basically, you know, looking at Moscow for the first time. And I had the privilege of going to the Victory Museum, which was quite moving, and one of the most sophisticated and intricate demonstrations that kind of immersed you in history. And I wanted to remind people at home in America how our history is being rewritten in schools and things and forgetting. But I want to pull back on an American who remembered it, and that was John Kennedy, when he said in his quote 40 years ago, I think it was 40 years ago this month, he said, "We owe a debt to the Red Army of gratitude that we can never repay." You know, over 27 million lives lost. And I don't understand how that sentiment has shifted, that honoring of our union against the Nazis at that time, how America and Russia, or then the Soviet Union, and other countries united against Nazis. And it's really disheartening. It's very sad that America has chosen the wrong side of history in this moment and are actually funding, you know, extremists and Nazis, and it's just deplorable, because I've had relatives that fought in World War II, and I think they would be shocked to see. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Victory Museum, and how beautiful it was, and the immersive history and sophisticated. It was like nothing I've ever seen. And also, all the myths that are told about Russia. As soon as I got off the plane and experienced one meal, it was shocking. Like, for instance, the food tastes so good. There's no chemicals, there's no GMOs. The people are warm and friendly and inviting. And, you know, I'm not just giving you a smoke screen or anything. I'm telling you the truth. And I've heard it from other people. The architecture and the history is amazing. And so I encourage Americans to do their own bit and try to be tourists, to try to find out more about Russian culture and not fall into what the elites are trying to push with the propaganda of Russophobia and trying to create an enemy where there is none. So find it in your heart to find compassion and really find out about being in Russia. And anyway, I just wanted to share that because it's been a beautiful experience, and so many of the stereotypes were smashed right away that were given by the Western media.
Tara, well, a question for you. With the next year, there will be a presidential election in the United States. So, if not Biden, will something change for you? If Biden is not the next president, will you be ready to go back to the United States? So the threat you're facing, is it coming from a specific person, Joe Biden, from the U.S. administration, or from the political establishment in general? So will a new president change anything for you?
I'm not sure if the new president will change anything for me. I have lawyers working right now to figure out, because some of the cases are sealed that are against me, so I don't know what they have in mind. But I do know this, that unfortunately, the Democratic National Committee is quite corrupt. Unless that's dismantled and taken down, I'm not sure things will get better. If Joe Biden actually makes it to run again, which I'd be surprised, but apparently that's the plan. You know, unfortunately, we're in a time right now where it's not just him, it's his team, and it's the people behind him and the bureaucrats behind him that are pushing for war and proxy war and more money to the military. So until we get some representatives that actually represented the people of the United States, that want the focus to go back to America, citizens, and to infrastructure and building, I'm not sure there will be a change at this point. And as far as going back, you know, I mean, I love to just be able to go back between America and Russia and do normal things like we did before. So I'm hoping that there will be some repairs done. But right now, you know, I think a lot of bridges were blown up, actually. They were just destroyed of communication and trust. And it's going to take a long time, I think, for Russian diplomats and Russian representatives to be able to trust American officials. I mean, I watched American officials really break that trust and lie. And they lied to the American people. So.
Да, Тар, знаете,
One more question we got online from our live stream. Gennady Fishman asks you, he asked you to comment on the request for Joe Biden to take a cognition test. This is on behalf of the Republicans in Congress before running for president. So is this a real, so can this be actually done, that he take a test whether he's mentally fit for purpose?
And I mean, it's actually a legal requirement that his physical and mental fitness be tested. However, they've been really concealing his results. I don't know how much longer they can conceal it. So hopefully the Republicans will be successful in having a more transparent ability to assess it, because right now it's pretty clear that there's some difficulties with that.
и еще один вопрос.
And one more question. So the colleagues are asking about the corruption allegations against the Biden family and their ties to foreign governments. How is this covered in the U.S. media? Is it covered at all? And what do ordinary Americans think about this?
Question, because one of the complaints right now is that there is a complete media blackout with corporate media about the Biden corruption, the Hunter Biden laptop. As you recall, they tried to, actually suppress the New York Post itself for a time. And, so, and there was a weaponization, again, we're going back to the weaponization of the DOJ and the FBI infiltrating social media to suppress the truth. So I think American citizens, and you can see it by the poll numbers, I believe before I left, it was Biden's approval rate was at 36%, if I remember correctly, which is the lowest in 80 years for a president's approval rating. So that kind of tells you where people's minds are. Also, 80% of people right now, and American citizens, do not trust the corporate media. And you've seen all the, like CNN and MSNBC and some of those mainstream media is having to make layoffs and to close down because their ratings have fallen, because people don't trust them. They've been lying too much to the American people. And I think the corruption case is very important. I know that there's a huge push. They have receipts, they have bank accounts, they have, and again, this goes back to whistleblowers, but one of the whistleblowers in that case has disappeared, and I don't know the case, what's going on with that, but they have others, and they do have the bank receipts and proof that unfortunately, when Joe Biden was vice president, he was influence peddling and created shell companies and moved money around to family members. So he got political and financial gain, which is illegal in the United States when you're a vice president.
Спасибо.
Thank you so much. And one more question. In general, today, what do average Americans are interested? What are they interested in? So what are the topics? Maybe Russia is too far away, Ukraine may be too far for them to, well, maybe they're thinking about the upcoming election in the United States or the state of the economy. So what are the topics that are interesting for average Americans today?
The mainstream media in the West, what you see are social, cultural issues, trending, or things like that. But you have to understand that's artificial. Americans are concerned about one thing right now, the economy. They're losing jobs or wages are stagnant. Infrastructure is falling apart. Fuel prices are off the roof. I mean, it's really, I know people are really struggling financially to make ends meet. We have a higher food insecurity in the United States than we've ever had in history. And if you just look at videos that you've seen maybe online of the cities and the state of the homeless, you can see the dire. So when people are in survival mode, they're not really thinking about existential or other things going on. They're literally thinking about, how do I feed my family tonight? How do I pay for that doctor bill? Because right now medical care is also a problem in the United States. So my assessment of this, and this is just my opinion, is that the number one issue is economy. And then some polls have shown that. However, if you were to watch social media or some of the corporate media, they try to trend and they try to divide and they try to sow all kinds of discord that way. But, really what people are concerned about is survival.
А почему, как вам кажется, значительная часть...
And how come many election campaigns in the United States, they are accompanied by political scandals? Is this just a way to distract people from their economic challenges?
It's a tactic, right? So when you have a campaign, you have opposition campaign research. So there's whole teams of people assigned to go after the opposite candidate and try to find their weaknesses and exploit it or try to find division. So of course, social and cultural issues, it plays on their emotions. They get caught up in that when actually the real conversation is the economy usually. So it's called switch and bait.
Ну, дефолта Соединенных Штатов.
Well, probably the United States has averted a default on its debt. Is that so?
I'm not sure. I think that that was more political theater to distract from the fact that they've spent so much money on giving weapons to Ukraine, and that is considered a money laundering operation from the United States and escalating us. I think the most important conversation that everyone should be having right in this moment is why are we so close to World War III, and how do we get away from that? And some people say we're already in it. I think there's still time, but I just am very concerned as a citizen, and so are many of my fellow citizens, because the rhetoric has gotten so high, the aggression by NATO and Western countries have gotten so high. And I'm speaking as an American. American citizens are looking at our representatives saying, what are you doing? Why are you taking us on the verge of nuclear war? Why in the world would you think that a tactical, limited nuclear war is possible when it's not? It's insanity, and many of us are frightened, frankly.
Один вопрос, и
One more question and then on to Ms. Butina. So the civil society in the United States, do they understand the actual threat of a nuclear third world war? Is there an awareness and understanding?
An awareness, but right now, the environment that we're in, if people speak out, they get targeted and they get either suppressed, or they, like what happened to some of the January 6 people, or what happened to some of the people I know that are, anti the proxy war and don't want NATO. They get targeted and silenced and even jailed. So I think that there are people who are very aware and very afraid. But you also have a percentage of the population that is propagandized, right? They fall into it because they're just trying to get home, pay the rent, pay the bills, get the doctor, take care of their children. And, they're not even aware of how close we are. But there are, there's others that are paying attention.
Тара, у меня тоже вопрос.
Tara, I also have a question for you. In 2024, the United States will have its presidential election. So there is this feeling this will be once again a Biden versus Trump duel. So if Trump wins, will this change anything?
It's interesting because I have two thoughts on that. Now, Trump is saying publicly that he would stop all the funding that we're doing towards the proxy war, the NATO and American aggression, and stop all the funding to Ukraine, that he would end it in one day, that he would, make friends with Russia. However, I don't know if he has the power to do that, because you have people, like I said, behind the scenes, the bureaucrats that are pushing the other way. So it's hopeful, but it's the only sliver of hope, really, with any of the candidates. Ron DeSantis has made it clear he would continue with this proxy war. We know where Lindsey Graham stands, and that's, he's, but you have to understand too, even in his own party, he's considered extreme in some ways. You have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who states that he doesn't want to support any more money going to Ukraine and has been very outspoken against it. However, can we trust his words? I don't know. Time will tell. Remember that his, I believe it's his daughter-in-law is in the CIA, and his son fought for Ukraine. So time will tell what his position really is. Will he just simply shepherd all those votes that went astray from independents and Democrats into voting for Joe Biden? So in the end, when he loses the primary, because he probably won't win, will he say, okay, now vote for the Democratic nominee? So really, it's kind of up for grabs right now. And remember, it's early. Other people haven't declared, so we might get a wild card. My prediction has been that Joe Biden won't quite make it to that, to run for president, I think, health-wise. And so I think they'll replace him with Gavin Newsom, who is the governor of California, and try to run him as the candidate. Gavin Newsom recently did a, United States tour, if you will. And if it's Gavin Newsom, again, we have the same kind of administration. Unfortunately, and I say this as a former Democrat and who worked quite a long time The Democrats have become the party of warmongers. Iraq, Iran, Libya, go down the track. They have been increasingly more towards doing these foreign adventures rather than helping our infrastructure in America.
Можно еще тогда один задам? Тара, вы сказали, что
Tara, you've said that when you worked for Biden, you witnessed corruption. What did you mean?
Well, besides my case, obviously, that obvious thing. One thing I noticed that I didn't, I went in my 20s, right? And you go in idealistic, like you're going to be doing public service, and you're going to be doing good. Immediately, I found out that the corporate interests had priority with members of Congress. In particular, Joe Biden was very close to DuPont, DuPont is a huge multinational corporation. They pretty much funded him and took care of him. I was supervising interns. I was instructed to hire VIPs, they called them, but they were sons and daughters of people on the DuPont, not just working for DuPont, but like on the board of directors, so very wealthy families. And you could kind of see the meetings and the campaigning. You could already kind of see just how much influence, basically, Joe Biden got from corporate interests. And unfortunately, in America, and it's situated differently politically than other countries, even in Europe. But we have whole lobbying groups, whole people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to try to get their interest and influence over a politician. It's sort of really, in a way, it's almost like a legalized bribery, in my opinion. And what happens with that, and this is the downside, is, for instance, like with a pharmaceutical company, is they can influence how a representative of Congress will vote regarding restrictions or like making sure that the medicines are healthy and making sure they're good, right? Like if there's a restriction that Congress wants to pass, maybe a lobbying group will come in and try to get that representative not to vote for restrictions so that their company can thrive. So it kind of works like that. And unfortunately, Joe Biden was a very willing, and you can find video clips of him talking about it. He basically is very much in line with corporate interests and also defense contractors. I mentioned to you that I worked for Leon Panetta. Leon Panetta has been on MSNBC recently talking about Ukraine, but what he doesn't say, he says he's the former congressman and former CIA director, but what he doesn't say is that he's on the board of Raytheon, which Raytheon is a weapons manufacturer. So he's getting a personal, money, right? So how can he make objective geopolitical analysis if he's being paid by a weapons manufacturer is my question. Is he still on the board of Raytheon? What are his ties now to Raytheon? Has he left? That's the question, right? So that's an example.
Тара, сразу вопрос.
Tara, a follow-up question. You mentioned that Biden has always supported military manufacturers and contractors. So how does this defense, how do these defense manufacturers, they influence the current administration?
Contractors. So you have like the Raytheon, and the ones that make the planes, the rockets, the whatever. And then you have defense contractors that work independently and they get enriched. So, like if you're in the Defense Department, it just got uncovered, I believe, by, and I'm not sure if it was the Gray Zone or another independent news organization, but they uncovered, for instance, that the Defense Department sold some widget, like some, thing, like, right, for $20,000 when it was actually worth $500. And so where did all the other money go? And the Defense Department has been through 7 audits, I believe, and I hope I have that number correct, but it was 7 audits that they flunked. Now, if this was a U.S. citizen going through a tax audit, they'd be in prison. So, but instead, the Defense Department keeps getting more and more trillions of dollars. Well, $1 trillion like next year, so billions. And what's interesting is that there's been really no accounting for the aid going to Ukraine. And whenever anyone tries to raise that in the Congress, they vote it down. And you'll notice it's bipartisan. And you can tell a lot by who voted for what. You just watch and you learn who's in the pocket and who's not.
Знаете, складывается впечатление.
Well, I have the impression that the United States and its NATO allies just recycle their old military and weapons in Ukraine so that they can rearm their own armies and deliver the latest NATO weapons to NATO countries. So the United States once again wins. They print the money because the dollar still dominates the international economy, and they rearm their allies, and this benefits the American weapons manufacturers, right, and those who support them in the government, right?
And I think really one thing that's been really, worrisome about all of this too is the amount of weapons that are actually physically getting to Ukraine as opposed to getting over to the hands of terrorists in different countries. And every time there's trying to be an audit or like a discussion about this, it's been shut down. I know the UN Security Council, the Russian Federation tried to have a discussion about, hey, what's happening? Why is Interpol issuing a warning that there's terrorist weapons that were supposed to go to Ukraine that ended up somewhere in Germany or, another country? So there's that. And also, you have, unfortunately, the corporate media in the West working in tandem with the administration to silence stories like Nord Stream 2. Seymour Hersh laid out exactly how that happened. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He's very well respected. And all of a sudden, his reporting was, submerged and, and he was discounted. But that was a war crime. How can they, not look at that? And so many American citizens were upset about that. That was a war crime, it was and actually part of it was owned by Germany, of course, so it was a civilian, infrastructure that was attacked. And the conversation's just gone off the table. The media doesn't even discuss it.
Да, к сожалению.
Unfortunately. So, do journalists present in this room want to ask any questions? You can ask questions to our two guests. We have Tara Reade and Maria Butina with us. So, a question from the second row. Please introduce yourself and your question. Советник президента newspaper. I remember the phrase, and it is supposed to be said by Paulo Coelho, the writer, who said that what happened once may never happen again, but what happened twice will definitely happen the third time. When we heard about Harvey Weinstein after Monica Lewinsky, so there is no end in sight. And all the cases that people report and people come forward like you with these accusations, you said that you're a geopolitical analyst. I will name a few states, and could you tell me what brings them together? Belgium, Greece, Denmark, Norway, Slovakia, Estonia, Georgia, Nepal, Singapore, Taiwan, Barbados, Bolivia, Ethiopia, New Zealand. So any idea what unites all these countries? Everywhere there are women who run these governments. Well, Belgium is a kingdom. Well, I will check with Belgium. Well, I was just looking 1 hour ago. Who is in power? Women are in power in all these countries. So you were talking here about being harassed and assaulted by men, but I don't remember a single case when it would be an opposite, when women in power would harass men. Does this happen?
I'm sure it does. And I can't, I'm sure that happens. I think that there's, in general, when it comes to sexual assault, there's a shroud of shame. And I just refuse to be ashamed. I didn't, it happened to me, but it doesn't define me. And one thing I have to say is that moving forward with my life, like after what happened and I couldn't get my case forward, I moved on with my life. I went to law school. I continued my studies. I continued my interest in geopolitical. And just because there's women leaders doesn't mean it's going to go away. I mean, look at Ardern, the former president of New Zealand. Her takes and the way she ruled her country, it almost became, a fascist state. She wasn't a good ruler, in my opinion. In my opinion, her rule wasn't. So just because it's a woman doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be better. I think it has to do with the character and their philosophical and political approach. But as far as to answer your question completely about women harassing men, I'm sure it happens. I mean, I'm not talking about being at work and a flirtation and making, a mistake, right? This isn't what I was talking about. What Joe Biden did to me was an assault. And he also, when he knew I wasn't interested in him, and he knew he had power and control. So it wasn't even about sex. It was about power and control and eliciting fear. Something about him liked that. There are some people, unfortunately, that they find that fun. I don't know why. But speaking about it openly makes it not shrouded with shame. And that's what I want people to be able to be comfortable talking about.
Я, с вашего позволения, позволю.
If you allow me, I can follow up, seeing that you have a smile on your face. In the United States, in English, there's a difference between harassment and assault. So these are two very different terms. And there is also rape. This is the next level. So in Russian, we do not see this difference. What we understand as harassment, it is just someone making some suggestions against one's own will. But what Tara is talking about is about assault. For example, when against your will, someone commits actions against you you do not want. This may not be like sexual intercourse. There are other kinds of violence. Tara was an intern, a 20-something who came to work as a political activist, to work as a congressional aide to make America better, and she believed in this mission, and she faced this choice she faced physical violence. I will not tell you what Tara told me, but read her book. This is atrocious what happened to her. Why I believe her? Because she wrote it down right away. She reported what happened to her, but there was no response. In 1993, her mother called the Larry King Show to share this situation. It's not that she woke up in 2019 and said, wow, I remember this. Her mother, she talked about this before. So she lost a job. She was canceled, basically. She could not find a job, which, well, we can understand well. Someone can question her report, but there were 7 other reports as well, 7 other complaints, and the cases that we know of, they have serious cases. So you cannot bring it to the Russian soil. We would have a different conversation on this. In the United States, the Me Too movement was the frontier of the Hillary Clinton and the Biden campaigns. So this cynical attitude is outrageous and unacceptable for a U.S. citizen. So considering all this, and if we add here the fact that we were accused of the fact that this was misinformation, but everything was in this Hunter Biden laptop, and I have this information, it is just horrible. We have a saying, Russian, that if you have a rotten tree, you won't have a good fruit from it. And then there is this diary of Joe Biden's daughter, where they take a shower together, so a father and a daughter. So taking all this together, if you just single out one fact, you can question it, but we see this whole pattern. This person must answer for his crimes, and you have to understand that Tara is not giving up. She doesn't want to leave everything behind. She wants to fight, but she can't fight if she is dead. So that's why I believe that staying here is the right thing to do. I believe that after this news conference, she will be called a Russian agent, that there are dozens of Russian intelligence officers behind her. Well, all kind of things will be said, but she will be still alive, and that's what matters, colleagues. Any other questions? So, Maria, we have a question for you we got from the live stream. All these moral values we have, the memory of the war, about our church, this is something people want to get rid of often. People want to modernize our ideology, our attitude towards the church. So what about upgrading our thinking in Russia? Well, times change, that's true. And some trends come, some trends go. We have got new words in the Russian language, and we got new words in the Russian language all the time. But there are some fundamentals, some basics. And since we have a US citizen here with us, and she knows that America used to treasure family values. There was a time where family was the cornerstone of American society. It now has been all replaced by this new vision of abortion, minority rights, and all this Nazism and these way to treat various ethnic groups. This is what they did to the indigenous people, to the Indians, and then we have to understand that we have our own fundamentals. And I believe that as a single nation, Russia must treasure its inter-ethnic conciliation, and this we discussed this melting pot concept and their peaceful coexistence, and often cite the United States as an example. But it is here in Russia that we develop this kind of dialogue between various ethnic groups, where various ethnicities have their own languages, their cultures, all these exhibitions, they have their own regions, and we don't try to annihilate them or to blend them in somewhere. So I think that our diversity, this is what makes us strong. And as for the family as a major value, without my family, I would have never been born. Without my family, I would have never be able to survive my imprisonment in the United States. It was my family. It was my forefathers and my parents, my grandparents, and just like Tara's family members, they fought in the Second World War. We call it the Great Patriotic War. This does not mean that we did not fight in the same war. We were allies. Our troops met on the Elbe in Germany, but now they're just falsifying history, and it is our sacred duty once again to stand up and defend the traditional world, the norm, family values, our history. And when it comes to the United States, someone must rise and say that the king is actually naked. So, well, Western liberalism is something we should not focus too much on to the detriment of our history and our traditional values. If there are no other questions, Tara, if you have any concluding remarks, you're welcome. Before we round up this news conference, if you have a message or something you wanted to say.
Thank you to my Russian brothers and sisters. I'm sorry right now that American elites are choosing to have such an aggressive stance, but just know that most American citizens do want to be friends and do hope that we can have a unity again. And instead of using money in the United States for all the things they're using it with military, they could use it for innovation and cooperation and economic gain, and all of us could have prosperity and hope and health and happiness. And I want to say a personal thank you to Maria and to all the people who have been, helping me since I've been here and giving me safety. I really am enjoying my time in Moscow, and I feel very at home. Спасибо.
Спасибо.
Thank you so much. This is the end of our news conference. Thank you to all our participants. Take care of yourselves and see you next time.